You make your living as a designer, artist, photographer, or other creative professional, and you're wondering, how will AI impact my career? Here's what you can expect and 3 tips for being successful. Welcome to episode 32 in Prolego's Generative AI series. I recently gave an AI presentation at the annual GRIT conference here in Savannah, Georgia. We have a big creative community here because the Savannah College of Art and Design produces so much world-class creative talent. My goal was to help them plan their careers in the AI era. I received a lot of positive feedback, with several people telling me how much it eased their fears. Here's an abbreviated version of my presentation. I hope it helps you or your creative colleagues. Hello, my name is Kevin Dewalt. Let's talk about AI and its impact on the careers of creative professionals like yourself. AI is the most important human invention since the discovery of fire, and it's going to radically change all of our lives over the next 10 years. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the kind of changes that you can expect to happen and offer some advice for what you can do as a creative professional to, thrive through these changes, however you choose to define that. Before we begin, I want to be clear that what I'm going to offer today is no value judgment about AI. I'm not going to talk about what should or should not happen, whether it's good or bad or right or wrong. I'm simply going to describe what will happen from the context of the major trends that are driving everything forward. And then I'm going to offer a couple specific suggestions that you can do to become successful and through this big change. There will be winners and losers in every sort of big technological transformation, just have there has always been in the course of history, and AI is no different. And I'm giving you this advice because I want you to emerge as a winner, however you choose to define it. So, a little bit about myself. My AI journey began 30 years ago when I was a graduate student at Stanford. I was walking around the campus trying to figure out what the heck should I study for my graduate degree, and read a couple of courses about some courses on neural networks and AI, and thought, woohoo, boy, this is going to be great. I'm gonna go ahead and design some machines that can automatically think for me and pick stocks, and everything's going to be great. And of course, this was in the middle of one of the big AI winters. There were not many other people with the class with me, and whatever I was building, quite honestly, didn't work very well at that time. So I spent the next 30 years in all kinds of innovation and starting my own companies in venture capital, working at big companies in software, sort of, the whole kit and caboodle around innovation and software and IT. And in particular, when I was in around 2008, while I was working at In-Q-Tel, which is the CIA's and the U.S. intelligence community's venture capital arm, I had a chance to connect with a young Stanford dropout who was walking around with a laptop and a graph database on it, talking about how we could help fight the global war on terror with this AI technology. Of course, that was the early stages of Palantir, and I helped shepherd in the first investment in Palantir at that time, and also help introduce the technology to the U.S. intelligence community. Fast forward then to 7 years ago, I started a company called Prolego with my business partner, Russ Rands. And our mission is to help accelerate AI in the Fortune 1000. And so we do customized engineering and strategy work primarily for some of the world's largest companies to help them get started with AI. And typically, when I sit down with an executive team and CIOs, CXOs, chief data officers, chief analytics officers, and talk to them about AI, I usually get one of 3 reactions: either fear, confusion, or elation in one form or another. But either way, it's highly emotionally charged. And so what I try to help them do is to get out of the near term, latest model hype, look what all this stuff can do, job losses, career, and really focus on the long-term trends that are going to influence their teams, their businesses, and even sometimes their own personal careers. And so I'm going to share some of those tips with you today. Um, just as a point of reference, please remember this slide. We're going to come back to it at the end because I think some of the things that I don't like about this slide, the kind of creepiness looking of some of the people, is an important lesson for you as a creative professional, and it actually represents one of your opportunities. As I talk about how I made this and why I'm not particularly happy with it. Um, So, AI actually, the research around what we think of as today's modern AI, and that is these large neural network models that are able to mimic it. Then in some say cases they're able to mimic even human level performance on tasks, are not new. It's actually the results of 80 years of research. And the first paper on this concept of using computers as a neural network was written in 1943 about McCullough and Pitts. And here's a little picture of them working away in their lab that I generated. And at the time, there was kind of a debate in the computer science community, at least among researchers, like what are these computer things going to be? Are they going to be machines that we give instructions that can process them, at high speed and do computations, or are they going to be more sort of like learning environments, like neural networks that can actually learn and discover and create? Well, obviously, one of these camps won out, and that is the first one. And AI research has continued for the past 80 years or so. Just 1 second. I'm going to try to put my do not disturb on my computer quickly so I don't get contacted again. Okay, and we're back. But research has continued, and about every 10 or 15 years, there's a breakthrough in AI, and everybody gets all excited, and expert systems and knowledge management systems, and even some of the early supervised learning techniques that we saw in the 2012 to 2018 time frame. The same pattern plays itself out over and over again, and that's like everybody gets really excited. There's an AI breakthrough. It's going to change the world. It's going to be thinking all these great things going to happen. We're all going to make lots of money, and people get everybody fired up. Everybody gets excited about the opportunities and what you can do with this technology. And inevitably, in every single time for the past 80 years, the same thing happened. And that is, it basically never pans out. And so research gets stopped. Companies stop funding projects. They get shut down. Startups go out of business. They can't raise money. And I have certainly felt like this individual in this picture several times myself in my career when I've tried to start these type of companies. This has happened every single cycle. Well, in March 14th in 2023, about a year ago, something changed. And that is OpenAI released a new type of machine learning, a new AI model called the GPT-4 large language model that shocked the world. And what OpenAI demonstrated was what most of us feel is kind of like a 10-year leap forward in capability. None of us saw this coming. There was the assumption from a lot of us was that there's going to have to be some sort of fundamental research breakthrough to be able to start, understanding what intelligence is and how to start mimicking the kind of creative thought that people put into thinking. And as it turns out, OpenAI decided to try to just throw sheer force at it. Bigger models, more compute power, more data to see if they could make a more powerful AI. And it worked. And what they demonstrated for the first time in human history was a model that was able to display human levels of reasoning capability beyond what any of us had expected. And when we started seeing papers come out about what these models could do and how powerful they were, we all realized that the world had fundamentally and instantly changed. And that's what's driving everything forward today. Some people call this current era of AI the era of generative AI because of these large language models and image generation, which obviously I'm displaying here today with these slides. So what does this mean? Well, when we say reasoning, what we notice is that the GPT-4 large language model was suddenly very, very good at what we thought were extremely complex intelligence tasks that were going to take researchers another decade or more to figure out. For example, if I say to you, "Hey, I walk into a room, I got a tennis ball in my hand, and I stick the tennis ball up against the wall, and I let go. Where's the tennis ball?" Well, we all know, a young child knows, and even a dog knows that that tennis ball is heading to the ground because we and everybody else have a knowledge of the world, and we have a mental model of gravity and how the world works. And so we know that, under all normal situations, that ball is going to head towards the ground. Well, with previous generations of AI, when you would ask them that question, they would respond with, it's balls on the wall, because all they know is what they have and they don't have a model for the world. And uh, it was seen as a limitation. It was really not going to allow AI to be a more complex decision and reasoning system because it couldn't make complex choices. Well, GPT-4 demonstrated incredibly powerful reasoning capabilities. And when you would ask these models that question, it would respond with something along the lines of, the ball is either falling towards the ground because of the gravity if you're on Earth in a normal room with Earth's gravity, and on and on and on. If you're familiar with the GPT-4 model, it can be kind of wordy, but it would give a real answer. And there's plenty of examples like this. And you've seen examples of how it can score high on the LSAT tests and everything else. And the world fundamentally changed. So this change is the key to understanding the long-term trend of where AI is going. And this is the key point that I want you to take away from this discussion. We are entering an era where the primary job for all of us in any kind of creative profession is going to be harnessing these intelligent reasoning AI models to do tasks for us. And a lot of our jobs are going to look more like programming jobs where we're tasking the computers to do things for us. So that's the long-term trend. And as you hear, things coming out of the media and what AI can do and deep fakes and this model and Sora and everything else, and this barrage of exciting research breakthroughs, accompanied by hype, keep this in mind that this is the long-term trend that we're heading. And that is, we're all going to be using these intelligent algorithms to do work for us. And more jobs are going to look like programming jobs. Now, when I'm speaking to creative professionals and I use the word programming jobs, most people are imagining something like this, right? And that is what we've all thought is programming for most of my career. And that is having people sit down and explicitly provide instructions to computers on what the computer should do using these arcane and difficult to learn programming languages. And I started doing this kind of programming when I was 12 years old. So I'm pretty familiar with this type of work. So when I say programming, I don't mean explicitly this job. I'm speaking more generally about getting the technology to do what we want it to do by giving it instructions. The world that I'm imagining, or the world that I see coming, is something that looks more like this, where we're speaking into our phones and reading and typing and interacting with this technology in a more natural, scalable fashion that allows us to harness this technology and get it to do what we want to do and communicating back and forth with it. And so that's what I mean by programming. Now, when I talk about this future, I typically get one of two objections. And the first one is very understandable. It goes something along the line of this says, okay, Kevin, yeah, that sounds great, but I've heard this hype before. Where are we in the AI hype curve? And when does this all kind of die down and go away for a couple of years? And that is very understandable because that's been happening again and again and again for the last 80 years. Well, the hype curve is not going away because we're no longer on the hype curve. In every technology, at some point the hype cycle ends and it's no longer a cycle. It's just a trend. Nobody sits around talking about, hey, when's the hype cycle going to end for mobile computing? Like, when is this trend going to end? Because it's no longer a cycle. Once the iPhone came out and mass adoption happened, it was simply a trend. And that's why most of the people on the earth have a smartphone. But before the iPhone, there were cycles, and every couple of years, the mobile computing would go through the Newton and Palm hand pilot handspring. Pick your device that percolated between the late 1980s, and the arrival of the iPhone. But there were cycles of booms and busts that really never captured mainstream adoption the way everybody expected. Well, that's where AI has been, but that's not where AI is today. And I would argue that it is in mainstream adoption, and not just because of the arrival of ChatGPT, which was really the first consumer product where anybody could go experience AI. What's happening now is CFOs and CEOs of publicly traded companies are releasing quarterly files with the SEC and making analyst calls and essentially saying, we're printing money with this stuff and it's impacting the bottom line. And if you've spent any time working with public companies, you realize that while CMOs, chief marketing officers, and salespeople are prone to hype, chief financial officers do not, especially when they're making claims about their company's earnings to analysts and the SEC, because they don't want to risk a prison sentence by claiming something that's not true. So if you've probably seen on some of this channel examples of ServiceNow, Palantir, Palo Alto Networks, and others who in the last couple of weeks have come out and said, this is really impacting the bottom line and we're going to keep investing. So that's how we know it's no longer a cycle. It's because it is having bottom line impact. Analysts are hearing these claims by these companies. They're raising the stock prices. And then these same analysts are reaching out to other companies during their analyst day conversations and saying, hey, when are you going to start leveraging this AI solution? And the companies are asking are going to have an answer. This trend is inevitable and it's going to continue. So that's one objection. The second objection I typically get is around job loss, and the argument goes something like this: we're not going to need more creative professionals, more programmers, because now AI can do a lot of the work, and therefore, why would we hire people to do it? Because we can have AI to do it, and AI can do it for free. Just as if we had AI that could make carpentry work in a big carpentry shop, we would need fewer carpenters because AI can make all of the tables and chairs and bird feeders that we need, right? Well, that is a rational sounding argument if our demand for software and creative output was fixed. But of course, it is not fixed. Every time we get better at creating software, it simply increases the demand for software. And that will never, ever, ever stop in our lifetimes. So if you don't believe me, let's do a quick thought experiment. So I want you to pretend for a moment that this team here I'm showing on the screen is a team dedicated to you. It is a high-performing Silicon Valley engineering team that's entire mission is to just build software and solutions for you to make your job better, to make your life easier. And if you're asking yourself, well, I'm not sure what I would have that team do for me. It sounds like, I'd have to give them tasks. They'll figure that out. But consider one example. Imagine for a second that you tasked this team to create your own personalized communication center. They're going to build you customized solutions that take in every email and every phone call, every text message, every letter, every social media notification and post, an article you could possibly want to read. And they're going to funnel all that information. They're going to sort out all the stuff you don't need to pay attention to and servicing just the stuff you do need to pay attention to. And where you want to, they're going to summarize. They're going to automatically reply to things. They're going to help you figure out what's important and what actions you should take. Now, I don't know a single person who would not want this solution, right? I mean, who wouldn't want this? Of course, all of us would. Or imagine the kind of routine tasks you have at work. For example, suppose you're working on a project team and you're the project manager, and every Friday afternoon you have to send out a report about the status of the project. I've had to do this plenty of times in my career. And inevitably, the same thing happens. You got to go dig up a bunch of information. People have got to email on you and tell you what's happening, and they're always late. And you get it by 3:00 in the afternoon on Friday, and then you ruin your Friday evening trying to consolidate and type all this information that you're going to send out, and then nobody's going to read it anyway, right? And your Friday evening is ruined. I mean, I've spent multiple years in this situation in my career. Well, now imagine for a second that this team automatically takes that over that for you. And that starting every Friday morning, they automatically gather, collate, sort the information. They pre-craft the report. All you got to do is review it and check it. I guarantee you that within about 15 minutes of us talking about this team, we would come up with so many potential project ideas. Your reaction would be, hey, Kevin, I think I need a bigger team because you have so many ideas. And every time you would solve a problem, you would not stop. You'd want to have this team work on a harder one. Well, why don't you have this team today? It's not because you don't have the demand. It's because it is too expensive. So back of the napkin, I just kind of eyeballed this team and it's just like a $5 million a year runway, right? I mean, you need a venture-backed company with some traction to be able to have the funding to be able to put a team like this together. But when AI is capable of doing a lot of the routine tasks you would have this team do, and the kind of things that are challenging today, generating images, generating text, sorting text, pulling out information, collating things, generating spreadsheets, looking at trends. When AI can do that automatically at scale, you're going to be able to harness this technology to solve these kind of problems for yourself or for others. And other people are going to solve them for you. And we'll go on to bigger problems. And so that's what work is going to look like for all of us. And it never, ever, ever ends. As soon as we solve one problem, we're on to the next problem. That's capitalism, that's competition, and that's the hedonic treadmill that we all run on as Homo sapiens. You can be sure that if the Wright brothers walked into Savannah Airport today and could see jet airliners and everything we had, they would be shocked by two things. First of all, they would be shocked at how amazing the future is. And a little over 100 years after they got their first plane in the air, like, this is what technology has after making almost no progress for thousands of years. And they would be equally shocked by our reactions when our biggest complaint was that the fact that the food wasn't great and the Wi-Fi was spotty, right? As soon as we solve a problem, we're on to the next one, and that's just humanity, and it never ends. Now, I can imagine a world someday where human beings are doing, or I'm sorry, where AI is doing all the programming and all the creative and all the photography and all the design. And I don't know what that world looks like, but it doesn't look anything like this. And I don't expect to see that world anytime soon, because in that world where AI is doing all of the creative work, we will effectively be in a world where AI has replaced all human labor. And like I said, I don't know what that world looks like, but it sure doesn't look like robots walking around the office. All right. So that is the long-term trend. And those are two common objections that you're probably going to hear and maybe even be thinking yourself. I'm now going to move on to the part of this presentation where I offer you three specific pieces of advice that you can do as a creative professional when and when plotting out the next decade or two of your career. The first one is to keep your cool, right? Because as this technology accelerates, as the models get more powerful, people are going to go nuts and they're going to lose their minds. And there are very predictable things that are going to happen that we absolutely know are true. We know what's going to happen, and we have a choice for how we prepare for them, mentally prepare ourselves, and what we can do, how we can choose to react. For example, we know that all of us are going to know somebody that loses their job or primary vocation to AI and automation. It's absolutely guaranteed to happen. In fact, it's probably going to happen to most of us. So we can expect that it's going to happen. We can be prepared for it and not lose our cool and be shocked when it does happen, because it will. We also know that there are going to be articles in the media and headlines in the New York Times that say, 50,000 people in X profession across these industries lost their job due to automation in the past, 60 days. Pick your time frame. We know this is going to happen. We also know that we are not going to see articles that say 50,000 new jobs created in a fragmented landscape across all different types of companies that don't quite have the same job title, but are doing kind of similar work, because that story is a lot harder to discover and it doesn't make for as sensationalized headlines to get our attention. So everybody else is going to be losing their mind. There are big changes going to happen. A lot of people are going to find them shocking, and you have a choice now for how you choose to respond. So if you do nothing else, keep your cool. Second piece of advice is to use AI wherever you can. I am continuously shocked by the people who go to great, put so much energy into telling themselves, and sometimes me, why they can't use it, why it won't work, it's not right, instead of actually going in and trying it and seeing how easy and useful some of this technology actually is. It does not require advanced degrees to be able to use today's generative AI. In fact, my Stanford degree, where I learned how to calculate the back propagation algorithm by hand, is completely useless in today's generative AI era. So I will give you an example. As you can probably tell, I used generative images to make the slides here today. And this is supposed to be an example of me here on the screen. So I used AI to make these slides. What you don't know is that I had no idea how to do it. I have no design sense whatsoever. I have no design training. Basic, I mean, I know what the color blue is, but that's about as far as I go. And I've also don't spend any time doing image generation. So I didn't know how to do any of this. But what I did know is the times that I've tinkered around with AI, I found that it has a tendency to, anytime I, or I'm sorry, tinkered around with creating images, I found that it tends to make anything AI related as a robot or a network or some other like creepy looking futuristic, image like the ones I have in the screen here. And I didn't want that. I wanted something different. I wanted something warm and something was human. Well, I didn't know how to do that, but I jumped into ChatGPT, and between ChatGPT and PowerPoint, I sort of figured it out and got a set of slides that captured the meaning of what I wanted to do in this presentation. And so I was able to use it. One thing you will quickly discover if you start using this technology is how easy it is to build something, and how difficult it is to get what you want. And although this sounds like I'm talking about a challenge, this challenge is your opportunity. So as a creative professional, you can become exceptionally skilled at using these tools as part of your craft. And people like me are going to pay you to do this. So although anyone can type to make type prompts to make slides, as I've demonstrated here, doing this was hard and it was tedious, and I don't have time to do it. And it's a lot more efficient for me to pay somebody else to do it. So let me give you a couple of examples. Well, first off, I had a very difficult time getting the kind of theme I want to make the slides look consistent. I started by going into ChatGPT and telling it to develop a style for me, but then it started coming out with some images that look kind of creepy and weird. It just I don't really know how to describe it because I don't have the design sense, but it didn't look right. Then eventually I made, let's go back to it. I'll show you right here. I made this slide here and I loved it. And so I told ChatGPT to develop a style guide so that would be basically a template I could use, and created a GPT so that I could make additional slides using the style template. I have another video where I describe how I did this if you're interested. But the key point I'm trying to make is that this still was quite difficult. And although I was able to get there, I had a really difficult time getting what I wanted. Yes, I was able to get a design style of slides that captured a different look and feel. It had the kind of like sepia looking, I think, that the chat GPT called it like timeless craftsmanship or something like this, instead of like slowly looking robots. But I had a lot of things didn't work well. For example, remember the slide that I showed you earlier that has the pictures of the people? Trying to get people in these images, especially when you pick a theme that is based on, kind of a look from the late 19th century, earlier, 20th century, like I did here, getting people in images that represent modern values of inclusion and diversity is very, very hard. Whenever I would ask the model to make a person, it made a white man. Whenever I asked to make an Asian person, it made a Han Chinese person, right? Because so, if your goal is to create something that looks like the cast of Hamilton, which is what I wanted to do, that is really hard. And I have to confess, I didn't quite get there. I basically ran out of time. And so sometimes the model would either just not put people in the right type of environments, or if it would make people of a diverse background and put them into a slide, they were almost put into like cartoonish, pejorative positions that didn't represent the values that I have. So even this particular slide, it's okay, but I would not put this as part of a client deliverable because it's just kind of, I don't know, creepy looking, borderline offensive. The gentleman on the right there, I mean, it's just, there's something off about it. This is not easy. And as a creative professional, this is your opportunity to really know how to harness something that someone like me will pay for you to deliver, because companies are extremely sensitive about how people are represented in images. If you follow the news, you may have seen in the last couple of weeks, Google released a model where they tried to present images that were more diverse, and in some cases sacrificed a historical representation to do so. And they had, when they asked for, pictures of Nazis, they had, people from, that from backgrounds that look like they were, from Africa or Asia in the senior, in military uniforms of senior SS people, right? So I don't know what the diversity makeup of the SS was, but I'm fairly sure they were not highly represented by peoples of color. So there was enormous backlash. My point in all this is that it is not easy to do two things at once. And one is make something that's historically accurate and at the same time capture the type of values and of inclusion and sensitivity that we have in modern society. The second is just trying to get the models to not hallucinate and do what you want it to do. So I tried for hours to get it to draw a tennis ball stuck to a ceiling. So you may recall, as part of the presentation, I told you that one logic problem was sticking tennis ball to a wall. Well, that story was supposed to be sticking a tennis ball to the ceiling. But I tried for hours to get it to stick a tennis ball to the ceiling. I tried every prompting hack that I knew. I spent time on the OpenAI forums, and I could not get it to do it. I tried This Is Important to My Career and step by step and chain of thought, and made it describe the problem first. Like, before you create the image, describe why there is no skylight or no window on the ceiling. And every single time I asked it, it would not draw a room with a tennis ball on the ceiling without a skylight or a window. I don't know why. I'm guessing because typically when you see a tennis ball in an image, it's going through a window or it's out and outside, and therefore the model ran down that path. But for whatever reason, I could not get it to do so. So I changed the story. But if you're a creative professional and you're dealing with a client deliverable, or you have an objective, sometimes that's not always an option. Again, I'm not telling you this to say why it's hard to use. I'm telling you this because this is your opportunity. And if you can learn how to overcome these type of complex edge case challenges, that's the difference between being able to harness this technology and have a successful career, or just being yet another person who can type a couple things into a prompt and generate something that sort of works. Okay. Finally, my final recommendation, and the third one, is to be the first. There is tremendous leverage of being the first person in your neighborhood, your community, your company to adopt a new technology that's part of a long trend. And whether that's the first person in your neighborhood to show everybody what household electricity and light bulbs can do to light up a room, or the first creative professional in your company that can really harness AI and use it on client projects, that is an opportunity. So it is, most of us, it's sometimes hard to do this because all of us have an imposter syndrome. And when technology is new and everybody on LinkedIn and social media is talking about how great it is and how they're doing amazing things and what an expert they are, and they're using all these terms that you understand, most of them are full of BS. Incidentally, it's very easy to have imposter syndrome and assume that, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. I'm not an expert. I don't know enough. I got to take more classes. I urge you to fight that and just get out there and be bold. Be the first, because what I've found in my career is the expert is the person who's not afraid to try. And if you try a little and learn a little, you are almost always going to be better than 90% of the people out there who won't try at all. So those are my 3 pieces of advice. Keep your cool, use AI, and be the first. I hope this helps you plan out your creative career. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I will try to do my best to answer them. Thank you very much. If you found this useful, I hope you'll join the thousands of data, analytics, and AI professionals who subscribe to our weekly email newsletter. Now, don't worry, this isn't the same irrelevant AI hype already filling your inbox and LinkedIn feed. Instead, we share assets used by the world's most successful companies, like job descriptions, strategy templates, case studies, code samples, and more. Just visit prolego.com/newsletter or click the link in the show notes.